England against Scotland, a tournament opener for both sides in Group B. We're here in the stands of the Kensington Oval, getting set for a tournament opener for the two home nation sides. So much to look forward to ahead of the tournament opener for England and Scotland. Joining me to talk through it all is Ashes winning fast bowler Stephen Finn and Matt Henry from the BBC Sport website and app. Finny, first of all, England will look at this game, let's be honest, as a game they've got to win. It's a side Scotland that they will expect to beat 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, you have to get the tournament off and running well, I think, as well. Clearly the World Cup, the 50-over World Cup in October and November got off to a pretty bad start against New Zealand, and that tumbled on through the tournament. So they'll be very keen to come here and to put a dominating performance on the board, and I think that will give the team confidence moving through the tournament as it goes through to those Super Sixes stage that we anticipate England should make.
Matt, you'd agree?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you look at it and England should beat Scotland if you just look at the teams and the players that will line up tomorrow. I guess we look back at the 50-over World Cup and yes, it's a different level because there are only 10 teams and that, but we thought that Bangladesh and Afghanistan in the first 3 games for England there would be a relatively gentle start, and England ended up losing 2 out of 3 at the start to New Zealand and to Afghanistan, and then to South Africa and Sri Lanka as things really unravelled. So you never know, but England are favourites, definitely.
I do think, however, there is going to be a giant killing at some stage in this tournament. We've seen 2 really close games already. The West Indies almost losing to Papua New Guinea, and then last night the game that we covered, our first one of the tournament, Namibia versus Oman, went to a super over, and I think that the surfaces we're seeing here in the Caribbean, how dry they are, the wind that you can probably hear on our microphones actually blowing across the ground, drying that surface out, meaning that the surfaces aren't going to get better as the tournament goes on. This ground hasn't had cricket on it for 3 months. You come back after a groundsman's had 3 months to prepare a pitch, and it was going up and down last night. So I think that levels the playing field. So it will give teams, the lesser recognised teams, without the firepower that a team like England has, more hope and heart, I think, going into these games against the bigger boys.
Yeah, Oman, Namibia, 109 plays 109. It was a surface that did all sorts. And we know that England, Scotland is going to be on the same pitch. And the World Cup final is going to be here come June 29. I mean, it could be a real determining factor how this square plays.
Well, the variable bounce actually wasn't from the bigger, taller fast bowlers. It was from medium pacers. And the left arm spinner was getting it to balloon out of quite a full length. So it seemed as though those undulations on the pitch were slightly full. And you look at Scotland's attack, they've got someone like Brad Curry, who I played with for Sussex, come round the wicket and angling it into those areas. Is going to be very tricky to play against. Yeah, so the pitches are somewhat of a concern that I've seen so far. However, I'm a bowler and I don't like seeing batters have it all their own way throughout a tournament. So to see tight games, to see low-scoring games can also be exciting as well.
We'll get on to Scotland in a minute, their build-up and what we can expect from them. But Matt, so much was made of England's preparation for this tournament. The fact that only 2 of the 4 games against Pakistan were playable because of the weather in the UK. But where do we think they are?
It's strange, isn't it? Those 2 games that did get washed out obviously halted the momentum a bit, but they have gained momentum in those 2 impressive victories that they did get in the 2 games that were played against Pakistan. The elephant, I've just been talking to Chris Stocks, one of our colleagues up in the press box, and there are a lot of things to be hopeful about with this England team. Phil Salt and Will Jacks had a bit of youthful and a bit of a fresh look at the top of the order. Jofra Archer is obviously a big game changer. England hope he will be a game changer to come into the team. So it does feel a bit different. It feels like a different team to the one that was in India. But what happened in India with the same management, the same captain, is the elephant in the room, I guess, that we're just trying to see how they get around it and overcome what went on there.
Well, speaking of the England captain, I spoke to Jos Buttler early on this morning. Have a listen to this. I think it's fair to say that Jos was in slightly spiky form.
Yeah, excited. It's a great place to be here in Barbados on the eve of our first World Cup game, so yeah, very excited.
Different format this year, this sort of double group stage. What do you make of the challenge and the journey your side's got to take to get that trophy?
Yeah, it feels like a real World Cup, doesn't it? Lots of teams involved, and so there's never any easy games. Every game we have to be right on it. Match the intensity required for the game. All we're focused on at the moment is that Scotland match. That's the biggest and most important thing right now.
And what of that Scotland game? Because they'll look at this as a free hit.
Yeah, absolutely. We know there's expectation and stuff, but no, I'm fully focused on what we need to do. We need to prepare really, really well. We expect a really tough challenge, we need to train well, prepare well, and play well.
There's one thing we saw from the first game here is that there is variable bounce on this surface, and it is quite an awkward surface that high scores may be challenging on. I mean, what have your expectations from what we're going to see in the Caribou?
Yeah, I think to as we've always mentioned with the guys, is assess conditions and try and play accordingly. What does the game need? What's the team need from you? It's not always in the batter's favour all the time in T20 cricket and short boundaries, flat wickets. So we've got to be able to adapt and communicate that well as a team and work out what's going to be a winning score.
How does that change your plans and your planning meetings when you do know a surface is going to be a little bit awkward like this?
I think it's being aware of stuff, but we're trying not to play the game before the game's been played. I'd say we plan, we prepare. It's good to be here and get a feel for conditions and practice, but on each day you have to be ready and be able to adapt in the game in T20 cricket, be able to read the conditions and share that with the team and all try and get on board with that.
I remember ahead of the 50 over World Cup, you were quite clear on not wanting the term defending a title. Is there a different mindset this time?
Not really. I'm just focused on this tournament. I'm really excited for it. The team's in a good spot and that's all we're looking forward to.
What have you learned from going into that previous World Cup to this one?
I'm focused on this World Cup.
In terms of your side, do you know what your team is for tomorrow?
No.
Really? What are you looking for? I know it's...
Tell you the team numbers. So, no, I'm pretty settled with what we're trying to do as a team. I don't need to sit here and tell you.
Mitchell Marsh made a little aside joke saying, I hope you don't pick Wood and Archer in the same team across a World Cup. I mean, that's a brilliant weapon to have in your side.
Yeah, we've got lots of a real strong squad. We've got 15 guys here, all desperate to play and perform, and we've got lots of really good options. So we're trying to come up with the side that we think best for the first game.
How much are you looking forward to the challenge of this World Cup? Because it's an intense tournament. It always is, a 20 over World Cup.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well then, Finney, you know Joss very well. He's a good friend of yours, and that surprised me a little bit, that interview.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think he's a very likeable guy, although maybe not to you after that interview now. But he's got this competitive streak in him, and he'd have been hurt by the way the team played in that World Cup. And I think evoking memories of that and feeling as though that might just derail them slightly, bringing those thoughts into their minds coming into this tournament. So I think they almost just want to exercise the demons of those and just leave them in a box, not to be disturbed until they're off and running in this World Cup. And they'll see this as a potential banana skin. That game in 2018 where Scotland won at the Grange, there'll be memories of that. I'd imagine Scotland will have a few supporters here as well making noise. So it's not going to be a walk in the park for England, and that interview, I think, suggests that they recognise that's the case.
Matt, he was in similar form with the wider assembled written press as well, so I won't take it too personally. But it just felt to me that when you speak to the press and a journalist, as an athlete, you're not speaking to them one-to-one because you're having a nice chat. You are, as the media, the conduit between that person and the listening or watching or reading public. And surely you realise that actually seeming spiky like that, you're only going to create the impression that something isn't quite right.
Yeah, definitely. And the point of the media and the point of press conferences and interviews is so that the fans, as you say, get to hear from the players, because they can't ask those questions. And fans and followers of all sports really often criticise the questions that journalists ask and that sort of thing. But there was nothing wrong with the questions you asked there, Henry, in the slightest. And Joss is a funny one that I don't think he particularly enjoys speaking to the media. He'd probably admit that himself. Alistair Cook, Finney, was probably another captain who I don't think he admits now. I've spoken to him about it. He didn't enjoy doing it. It's not everyone enjoys it, do they? As players, as captains and things. And that is, ultimately, we've got to accept that is fine as well. Yeah,
and I look back at the successful test team that I played in 2010 to 2013 until it was disbanded on that tour to Australia, where Mitchell Johnson had his say. But We had a strict policy that you didn't let the press into the environment, and it was a bubble that was created, and you didn't let anyone in to disturb the feeling within the group. And the only feedback that was valuable to us as players in that time was the feedback of the people within the four walls of the dressing room. So I don't know whether there's been a slight maybe change of heart from that perspective to say that there is external noise. There's going to be external noise because of what happened in India before Christmas in the 50 over World Cup. We want to make sure that we're letting none of that noise into the environment, and we're just going to concentrate on ourselves. And that's sort of what I garnered from the interview, just in a slightly spiky fashion.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is I found it quite a contrast, and I've written a piece that people will be able to read on the BBC website today, that quite a contrast between the attitude that Matthew Mott had when he spoke to the press during the Pakistan series a couple of weeks ago at Headingley, after one of those washouts. And Matthew Mott was... The last time we all spoke to Matthew Mott, he was similarly spiky in Kolkata at the end of that World Cup, and you can understand that it was an end of a long tour, and he said how difficult it was coming again and again, having to talk to the media, and it was death by 1,000 cuts was, I think, the phrase he used, what he felt India was like. But he, in that interview last week, or the week before, was very open. He admitted that mistakes were made, said England want to be more open as a team. They want to be a bit more honest with each other. They said he said they got a bit insular. I think he meant within the squad in India, and they want to change that. And I guess the only thing is, what really matters to a lot of degree is what Joss is saying to the team in the dressing room, isn't it? Ultimately, that is more important. As much as Henry and I want Joss to get along well with us and to speak well to us, what he says in the dressing room is more important than what he says to us in terms of the team winning.
And there's an element of, I think, I can't remember where, or I've read it or I've watched and listened to it, where whilst the captain or the coach are talking to the press, you're not just talking to the press, you're talking to your dressing room, and you're trying to convey the message and reinforce the message that you're saying within the four walls of the dressing room. You want that to be conveyed outside. So if the England team, and I don't know if this is the case, I'm just speculating on what we've heard today from Joss, but if the England team have said that we don't care what is going on in the outside world, we only care about making sure that we're in the best possible place to play cricket, then that might be reflected in the interviews that are given throughout this tournament, which isn't good news for us as journalists.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, and ultimately, it doesn't really matter to us because we're not trying to be Joss Butler's best mate. It makes no odds to us. You just know that we all headed up to the media centre with a little bit of, oh, all right, if you're going to be like that. And it's a dangerous game to play because you do not want the message being sent to the public, England in spiky mood before World Cup opener. Say they were to lose to Scotland in the first game. Suddenly the journalists are right on them. And are you not better off thinking, okay, actually, we're just going to be a little bit more relaxed, play the game a bit more? Or do you not think like that as
But
players?
does it matter what the journalists think? Doesn't matter. To a player, and I've been there, but I've been in spiky moods with the press because someone said that I'm hopeless or something. And it's frustrating. You find it frustrating because the only and it affects your mindset. And I never liked it. So we made the conscious effort to block the press out in that period. And clearly, when it all came crashing down, it came crashing down quite spectacularly with targets on our backs for that. But we won a lot in the process of getting to that point. So maybe England are willing to sacrifice that warm-heartedness that we've seen a lot of them over the last few years for being really determined to win this World Cup, which I don't think we can argue with.
And ultimately, their job is not to be nice to us. Their job is to win games.
Exactly. And if at the end of this tournament they win the tournament, and we've not quite been given the same rosy-coloured access to the dressing room that we might have been, but they win the tournament, they'll feel as though that's justification. I know that I felt like that as a player. I really valued you value the fans, you value the people's support, but the thing that you're judged on and the thing that you care about the most is winning games of cricket, and you'll do anything to do that.
Yeah, well, that does make perfect sense, and it's really interesting to get that insight. What about then, because we weren't going to get it from Joss, what about that England team? Because I think we probably know 10 of the 11.
Well, I'm hearing a couple of different things now, having just been chatting to a couple of our press colleagues. But for me, in this first game against Scotland, the decision would be between Chris Jordan and Reece Topley, I think, from that team that played the last T20 at the Oval against Pakistan. I think the batting is settled all the way down to number 7. I just think they're going to have to make a decision as to whether they want the hitting of Jordan and the death bowling at number 8, or they want the left arm swing and opening bowling prowess of Reece Topley, who's been a really potent wicket taker in white ball cricket for England over the last couple of years. He's been unfortunately injured in a couple of the tournaments that we've seen, but by him always being in the squads and taking that new ball, he's got real wicket taking potency, which if you take a couple early and then you unleash Archer and Wood on the middle order of Scotland, it means that potentially Scotland never get away from you. So I personally would be tempted to leave out Chris Jordan, play Reece Topley, and then have your pace duo there to really hammer home your advantage through those middle overs if you get the opportunity.
And those batters, just to confirm that, Salt and Butler, top of the order. Then you go Will Jacks, Johnny Bairstow, Harry Brook, either Liam Livingstone or Moeen Ali at 6 and 7, and then you're into your bowlers.
Yeah, and the thing with Moeen will come in, it will be important as a left-hander, and if it's blowing a gale tomorrow as it is today, that to have a left-hand option in the middle whenever you can to break up England's top 5, which will potentially be right-handers, or possibly top 6 if Liam Livingstone was at 6. You want to always have someone who can hit with the wind, hit to the leg side with the wind, and if that means promoting Moeen Ali up to number 3, possibly. I doubt number 3, I don't think that high, but maybe number 4 ahead of Johnny Bairstow, definitely possibly number 5 ahead of Harry Brook.
The flexibility of T20, isn't it? I think if you're shuffling people up and down the order in a 50-over game, it clearly disrupts people's roles within the team. But if England do get off to a rocketing start, and there are left-arm spinners to try and take advantage of, they'll have no qualms in sending Moeen Ali up to number 3. And I think that the advantage of these guys all having been and played in the IPL and playing different roles within the IPL, it gives England the ability to be flexible with that batting order, with what they deem fit with the game situation at the time.
England seem confident that they know what their strongest 11 is in a way that perhaps they didn't ahead of the 50-over World Cup. There does appear to be, Matt, a little bit more clarity.
Yeah, I think so. We said this yesterday when we spoke, didn't we, or the day before when we spoke, Henry, that role clarity is definitely a word that has been coming out of the dressing room a lot in the last few days, that they want people clear, unlike they were when Harry Brook and all that debate about whether he should get in the team, what position should he bat, how do they get him into the squad, ultimately the expense of Jason Roy last year. There's none of that this time. England have picked a squad, it stayed the same, and they've had a top 6 or 7 aside from pushing Moeen Ali up and down that will be pretty much as is, and then it's about picking between Mark Wood, Reece Topley and Chris Jordan, I think.
It's a very strong squad. There's no reason why England can't win this.
No, and I think Tom Hartley, who hasn't been talked about yet in the build-up to this tournament, he sort of just slipped under the radar as one of those people who are here with the squad as a support player, but tall, quick left-arm spin on these surfaces. I mean, I'm sat here looking out at the Kensington Oval at the ground now, and the square in the middle, it just like rolled mud from corner to corner. There's no grass patches on that square whatsoever. The groundsman is furiously watering around the outsides of it to try and get some moisture underneath it to try and promote some grass growth, but that surface is only getting drier as this tournament goes on, and that tall left arm spin of a Tom Hartley could come in and replace one of those seamers as a real potent threat as well.
Well, England will get a good look at this surface, and that will certainly be of benefit if they do get to the latter stages of the tournament.
From 5 Live Sports, this is the TMS Podcast.
What is Scotland then? Matt, realistic expectations for them? They'll see certainly the opening game against England as a real free hit.
Yeah, obviously any team goes into any tournament wants to get as far as they can, and they have to view it that if they beat Namibia and Oman, shock one of Australia or England, and then they can go through. That's how they will look at it. Scotland played the one warm-up game that they did get completed, was either side of a washout against Uganda. They got quite comprehensively beaten by Afghanistan, but we expect Afghanistan will do quite well in this tournament, so it's not a point to write off their chances. They played in a tri-series with Ireland and the Netherlands in May, and Scotland finished second in that group. They lost to Ireland, won one and lost one against the Netherlands, which were quite big swings either way, I think. I think they beat the Netherlands quite convincingly and also lost to them quite convincingly. So again, that doesn't tell you loads, but we know, as Finney says, he's played with some of these players. They've got a few players who play in county cricket, quite a few players. They have threats. They have George Munsey at the top of the order, who's hit 230s, I think it is, in T20 internationals. So they can cause problems, definitely.
And they'll be a side that are just going into this thinking, let's go and have some fun. Let's bloody the England nose and see what we can do.
Well, it's a very dangerous mindset to be playing against for your opening game of a World Cup. You just know that with the historic connection between Scotland and England geographically and the rivalry that comes with that, and how much they enjoyed winning at the Grange in 2018 as a marquee moment in their cricketing history. Really, it's another opportunity to do exactly the same. And when you are an underdog in a scenario like this, there is nothing better than ruining people's days. It's such a satisfying feeling if you're the underdog to go out there and really ruin England's day and ruin England's start to the tournament. And that is something that, as negative as it sounds, will give Scotland great heart going into this first game with their ability to potentially cause an upset.
Well, let's hear from the Scotland camp then. Michael Leask, I caught up with him, the Scotland batter, a little earlier on.
What an occasion, what a first game to start us off. Couldn't wish for a more exciting start, I guess.
Believe it or not, first time England and Scotland have met each other in T20 cricket.
Yeah, so I believe we've played a little bit of 50 over cricket against each other, but I mean, what a lovely venue and what a great occasion at a World Cup to do it.
There's a lot of talk about this being a free hit for Scotland. How are you viewing it?
I don't necessarily see it that way. I think we've played some very good cricket in the last few years, and I think people are now not taking us lightly. We're not to be underestimated. We've got some great cricketers who've been playing alongside these guys in franchise cricket, so they know what our guys are capable of. And I don't like the word free hit, but yes, we've got nothing to lose. We come into the game knowing that they're the underdog, but why can't we go and take them on head first and create history?
There was that T20 warm-up phase in Hobart ahead of the last T20 World Cup in Australia, where there was a real impression that Scotland actually mean business. This is a good team that can beat good teams.
Yeah, look, I mean, again, West Indies have found that out the last twice, the 3 times we've played them. Look, we're a very good unit. We've got some very good batters, some lovely quick bowlers, and some good spin. And in this conditions, like we saw last night, 110 played 110. It could be a dogfight, and that's exactly what we're after. The more that these conditions might help us, then we've got the skill set to do it, and why can't we go and do that?
What did you make of that pitch? Because it's going to be the same one tomorrow.
Look, it looked a little bit low, but again, England's seamers are slightly taller than Oman's and Namibia's, and they might get something different out of it. So I guess it's just about who adapts quickest. They've got a couple of nice quicks which might come on a little bit nicer onto the bat. You just never know. It might actually be that pace might be your friend. That's the way we certainly got to look at it and go, well, that's a challenge to relish. And obviously they've got some nice spinners as well, which so do we. So they're going to have to contend with our spinners just as much.
In terms of what Scotland's expectations are in this tournament, have you spoken about what you're looking for?
No, we haven't actually sat down as a group and actually laid out what we'd like, but I think as a unit we know we want to get through to the next stage. We know we've got the skill set, we know we've got the capability. It causes, well, people will call it an upset. We just say it's one more big fixture against the big guys, so to speak. We've got one fixture against them first off and Australia to finish, but England are in our sights first up, and why can't we set the ball rolling?
What are you looking for from how you approach this game, how you start this game? Because it feels like a good start could be crucial.
Yeah, you saw that with Ruben last night. The first over caused a bit of an upset in Oman's ranks, and why we've got the seamers in our group that can do that. We know their batters are going to come hard, but we've got firepower in Chris Soule and Brad Curry, who's been bowling phenomenally well, and he's been taking a lot of wickets in the warm-up games. So again, we've got a slightly different bowling attack for them to contend with, which one they might not have seen for a little while. So it's something we've got good assets, maybe a little bit of firepower and a little bit of tricky dicky, so to speak. So yes, it's good.
That game at the Grange in 2018, it'll go down in Scottish sporting folklore. I mean, you can almost hear the ground reverberating still. It was an incredible occasion.
Yeah, I think that's something the Scottish crowd don't get enough of. That was a huge occasion for us and a huge match, which they got treated to a hell of a game of cricket. And I hope tomorrow is something similar. The way that we handled ourselves on that day to put on the score that we did and defend the total that we did. Again, that's something we've got to do tomorrow. We've got to fight fire with fire tomorrow. and all we need is 2 or 3 cricketers tomorrow to come off. It could be any which one of our 11 on the field, and we just need 2 or 3 really to put their name up and show just how good we are. And again, it could be, we saw Callum and George and a few others on that day, and why can't we do it again tomorrow?
Matt, one element to the Scotland side that does give them a little bit of an advantage is the fact that they've played 13 T20s already this year. England have only played a couple, and the associate sides are so used to playing that sort of knockout cricket just to qualify for World Cups, and so there is that experience of that high pressure cricket already.
Yeah, we made that very same point on commentary last night, didn't we, when Oman and Namibia were playing. People think of them as inexperienced teams at this level, but Gerhard Erasmus, the Namibia captain, in advance of this tournament, had mentioned how they are used to playing big games, because not only do they have to play at the World Cups, they have to play qualifiers, which are knockout games often, to get to World Cups, or tournament cricket at least, if not knockout games. So when England are off playing tri-series against other teams, when England are off playing bilateral series against other teams, not tri-series, because there are hardly any of them anymore around in the calendar, they are playing, well, Finney, you can say, what's the difference between a bilateral series and a World Cup game? I imagine it feels very different, whereas Scotland get their experience of getting qualifiers and really competitive cricket.
Yeah, I wouldn't read all that much into it, because these guys have been playing in the IPL and playing in playoffs, which comes with its own pressures. But certainly we saw in 2 games so far in this tournament, we've seen West Indies versus Papua New Guinea, which got really close. You could see the West Indies just trying to eke their way towards the target in quite a timid manner, which isn't what you would anticipate from the West Indies, because of the pressure that comes with the importance of winning against the less strong teams. They will just know the importance of this game, and England, with all their confidence and all their big players, will still know that this is a banana skin that they need to avoid, and the pressures that come with that can do funny things.
And sorry to go back to England, I know we've talked about England already, but the thing we've seen with both of those games on slow pitches is teams taking it quite steady at the top, not going really hard early and then getting a bit stuck in their chase. We know England will not do that. We know Phil Salt will come out and try and slap the first 3 overs all over the place, as he did against Pakistan in a relatively low chase of 150 at the Oval the other day.
Well, I think it's an opportunity for England to double down. We said at the beginning of the 50-over World Cup, and we keep going on about it, but it does feel very relevant on the eve of a world tournament, only 8 months later, to say that they didn't look like themselves when they played those first couple of games. They looked timid. They looked as though they were just backing off a little bit, when England, what has been synonymous with them over the last 8 years or so, since the white ball revolution started in 2015, is that if they ever get an opportunity to double down on their aggressive method, they do it. And I really do expect, with those new faces, especially at the top of the order, for them to do that.
I suppose the obvious question is, what is Scotland's route to winning this game?
I think making early inroads into that batting lineup when they do get the ball in their hand, if they do that first, I think you have to make early inroads and put the middle order under pressure with the medium paces that they'll use and the slow left armers. And then with the bat, it's going to be tricky. They're not going to face too much pace like Wood and Archer before, if they do face those guys in tandem. But clearly the surfaces that we've seen here at the Kensington Oval, and the ones that I'm looking out upon now, don't strike me as 200 wickets. So yeah, with the ball in hand, it's about taking those early wickets. With the bat in hand, it's about hanging in there and posting something relatively competitive that then the pressure of the game situation can take over.
Matt, it was really obvious from hearing Michael Lee stat that they're not looking at this as, oh, we've got to go out there and hope for the best. They've really backed themselves.
Yeah, and they've beaten, in white ball cricket, I think Scotland have beaten Bangladesh, they've beaten West Indies, and they've beaten Ireland in the last 2-3 years, I think. So they've beaten big teams. They can do it. They know they can do it. England are probably a step up from those teams, you'd say, or at least West Indies have pulled themselves together since that game, I think. Improved. Maybe not the West Indies of now. Are probably up on a par with England. But yeah, they can do it. They definitely can. They have evidence that they can do it. But they're going to have to be very, very close to their best, and England probably a little bit off that.
That's probably fair, isn't it? It's not quite giant killing third round stuff from the FA Cup. They are a better side and closer to England than that, and T20 cricket by its nature means teams can have a brilliant day and have a brilliant result, but it's uphill.
Yeah, it's not even a team, is it, that has to have a brilliant day? It's one person has to have a brilliant day. A bowler has to wipe out England's 4 main batters, or a batter scores 80 off 40 balls and is just seeing the ball like a beach ball on that given day. I do think the surfaces are going to level the playing field slightly. I think if you were playing on absolute concrete roads, I think that you would anticipate England would win 99 times out of 100, given the teams that as we look at them on paper. But you put that game situation, the pressure, the history of the rivalry between the two teams, and then the surface on top of things layered up, I think it proves for a very compelling contest.
One thing it will be is compelling viewing in the crowd as well, because we know there's going to be a lot of England supporters, a lot of Scotland fans as well, and there was a really good turnout in the tournament opener here in Barbados between Oman and Namibia. $6 ticket, so it's very affordable for fans to come in, and the crowd stayed well beyond midnight when the game concluded. There's a beach over on the far side of the ground. There's some jet skis sitting on the sand as well, and music will be pumping. It's going to be a brilliant atmosphere, Matt, and it's going to be a special game of cricket, really, almost regardless of what happens in the middle. It's going to be a real occasion.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the great grounds in the world, isn't it? It's my first time here. A couple of days ago was the first time I'd ever been here. Finney's played here. It's just exciting to be here. It's a World Cup, another World Cup. We've had a lot of them in the last few years. One every year, it feels like. Well, it is one every year, isn't it? 2021, 2022, 2023, and now 2024. So they come around, but when they do, they are special.
Yeah, and it's a special place to play cricket as well for those guys that will be out there.
Yeah, fantastic. I like the addition of the stand, although it's disturbed the back end of the beach for people if they wanted to sunbathe and get away from the cricket for a few minutes. There's a huge stand, a temporary stand now, built on the far side of the ground from where we're sat now. But yeah, the atmosphere here is wonderful. A carnival type atmosphere. Hopefully at 10:30 tomorrow morning the sun will be shining and beating down upon us, and we'll have a real fantastic game of cricket to entertain the people that are watching.